Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Friday at last. Friday, and a Friday in December at that. December 15th, middle of the month, 10 days from the large-scale holiday that occasionally takes place. I think it keeps moving around on the calendar. I don't understand exactly why they don't just standardize things. Anyway, actually, I thought, getting ready for this morning and putting together a post last night about how we were supposed to be ready in the morning. I got 15th of the month. It's 31 days. Is this like March? Is this the Ides of December? It turns out it's not the Ides of December. The Ides is not always the 15th, as it turns out. The Romans had a very weird calendar, and I guess the Ides was their thing. And, I guess if you ever wondered, say, why did they ever revise the calendar anyway? Why did they have to do that? And why do we always hear about things like always? All the people who are, I don't know, if you're paying attention when they tell you that the dates have switched, Julian calendar, Gregorian calendar reforms, all sorts of calendar reforms. And I'm sure at some point you've said, oh, hey, well, December, but it's like, that prefix, DEC, shouldn't that be the 10th month? And it used to be, now it's the 12th month, but all of the names after what, like October or September even, right? September, October, November, December, sort of suggests that they would be the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th month. They used to be, but they had all sorts of things. So I read some Wikipedia yesterday. I learned about the Roman calendar, which I guess counts as thinking too much about the Roman Empire. Now I'm a conservative, which is good news because I'm now independently supported and wealthy. And all of you guys can take your Patreon support back, I guess. I'm a millionaire. Whee! Not true, of course, and it doesn't always last for these conservatives. You know, one story we haven't gotten to lately is I hope it's going to continue this way, utter collapse of the Project Veritas empire and the ouster of James O'Keefe from that. And I guess now I heard the other day that Hannah Giles, I don't know how she pronounces her name, who took over for James O'Keefe at Project Veritas, now also is resigning, saying this outfit is rife with corruption. I can't believe it. Hannah was the girl who dressed up young woman, let's say, who dressed up allegedly as a prostitute to fake up the first video with which O'Keefe ever had that success. Remember, marching around outside of the Acorn offices dressed as a pimp and prostitute, but then, of course, entering the building in rather respectable dress and then attempting to get loans and then splicing the whole thing together to make it look like it was all one big scene. Anyway, so, gee whiz, she's found out that it's super corrupt. I think I may have put a story aside about that one. Anyway, I was going to tell you, it turns out that the Ides of December, for some strange reason, and this may be why the Roman Empire collapsed, is the 13th and not the 15th. There were several months that had Ides, or I guess they all had Ides. I don't know. We learned somewhere along the lines when we were making jokes about the Ides of March, probably in March at one point, that it was the 15th of the month, and which months had 31 days. But I guess that's not even really it, because the Roman months had, 29 days, 30 days, 28 days. They were all over the place. And that was one of the strange reforms that they made. But for whatever reason, a couple of months, the Ides is the 13th. And I also learned, should I just even read it to you? Let's see. I'd have to find this whole thing up again. But Ides of December I searched for, and there was a Google hit on the Wikipedia entry for the Roman month of December. You need to know this? I'm not sure. It's difficult to tell. There's other things, too, like secret documents and former president on trial. Anyway, war, whatever. December, which, of course, comes from the Latin of, decem, D-E-C-E-M, meaning 10, which I think we figured out, or this was interesting too. Mensis December. Mensis, which I guess means the month of December, which then makes you think about, I didn't mean to go here, but I mean, is that the root of menses and it being monthly? Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, just wondering if that's where that came from. Probably. Didn't mean to, land there. I was talking about calendars, which I love. I don't know. I like them. I have them sometimes. I want a better one for the refrigerator this year. But December was originally the 10th month of the Roman calendar, following November, or Novem for 9, right? And preceding the month of Januarius, January. They didn't have J's, of course. They had I's, which you know from Indiana Jones, right? It had 29 days, December did. And when the calendar was reformed to create a 12-month calendar starting in Januarius, December became the 12th month at that point, but retained its name for some strange reason, as did the other numbered months from Quintilis, which was July, but then Julius Caesar, whatever, all the way through December. So they used to be, I don't know what else they had, but I guess Quintilis, and then, I don't know, what did they have for the next month, and then September, October, November, December. So at that point, its length was increased to 31 days under the Julian calendar reform, which I guess also gave us July. But here's the thing. The Romans did not number days of a month sequentially from the first day through the last, as we do, which is so sensible. It's just one of those interesting things. A little revelation about how Romans thought about stuff like that. It's interesting. So what do we do? What do you mean? You have 29 days in July. How the hell do you know you have 29, or December? You know, 29 days in December if you don't number them. And the answer is 29 is 29 no matter how you count it. But they used to count back from 3 fixed points of the month. So this is a little bit like the way the English convention of telling time in certain ways. I mean, now, of course, with digital clocks, we say it's 8:58, where we might say prior to that. I mean, well, it was, I don't know why. I guess it didn't really have much to do with, well, maybe the digital clocks make the readout. It lends itself to reading 8:58, as opposed to on an analog clock where we could see there were 2 tick marks until it was 8 o'clock. We didn't say, or 9 o'clock, we didn't say it was 8:58 very often. We would say 2 minutes to 9. So similar way of reading the calendar for Romans, as it turns out. What are we doing? All right. Well, now we've started and we have to finish. Instead of having numbered sequential numbering of the days, they counted back from 3 fixed points in the month. The nones, Nones, which you would, I don't know, if you were trying to figure things out like nones, is that like 9? Is it the 9th of the month? It's not. Doesn't matter because their number for 9, as we know, was Novem. We just read that, so it's not the Novemes, it's the nones. What is the nones? I don't know. It's linked. You can read all about nones and whether I'm pronouncing them correctly. Nane or nones. Okay. I better tell you what that means. That would fall, this is why it was so confusing and why they had to reform everything, I guess. It fell either on the 5th of the month or the 7th of the month. How can you tell? This I don't understand, and this must be why they had to reform things. So if you said, well, you remember they're counting back from these 3 fixed points. Nones on the 5th or the 7th. The Ides, that's the one we've heard of. That fell either on the 13th or the 15th. And then the Calends, Kalends, Calends, but doesn't that make you think of, it's probably absolutely where it came from, calendar, right? The Calends was the first of the following month. In other words, we're looking ahead now to the Calends of Januarius, I guess, January. So, this is how they would tell the day of the month. The nones of December was on the 5th, and the Ides was the 13th. Why? I don't know. It just is. Lost in the mists of time. The last day of December was I don't know anything about Latin pronunciation, but Pridie, maybe? Pridie. Pridie calendus Januarius. In other words, in English, the day before the Januarian calends. So the calends of January, the first of the month, and you would describe days, the last day of December, as the pridie, the day before the 1st of January. Weird. It's just an interesting way of looking at things in general. Roman counting was inclusive, it says. Then there's a link to why that word is being used. Doesn't mean that they have, people of all genders, faiths, creeds, races, what have you. It's something else, and you can read about it on your own time, damn it. December 9th was Ante Diem, I guess 5. They used the V, the Roman numeral. Idus Decembris. I'd get rid of this calendar too. That would be the 5th day before the Ides of December. It's much easier to say December 9th. Like, you imagine doing this? Okay, so the 5th day before the Ides of December. What effing day is it? But they unnaturally understood this, I guess, because this was the system they worked in. It's just weird, right? Where you and I have to go the 5th day before the Ides of December. First of all, when's the Ides of December? It's the 13th, not the 15th. 5 days before that is the 9th. Why don't you just say December 9th? That hasn't been invented yet. Wow. No wonder you fell. What a stupid empire, I say. So there you go. You get some idea of this. There's lots more. You'll have to read it on your own time. Why don't you read it tomorrow, which when you have the day off, which would be, let's see, December 16th. Are we counting backward now from, golly, well, let's see. If we're counting backward now from what's the name of it? The calends of Januarius. And I mean, that's a long way to go. 16th to, so 10 days, the 26th. Do we have nothing else to look at? 26th, 27, and we have a long way to go. Was it 31? So 10 days gets us to the 26th, and then another 5 days. So for 15 days before the calends of Januarius. Holy cow. Huh. And not all of them with little treats for Advent either. Okay, it's time to do the rest of the news. The rest of the world, bringing you the rest of the world in an hour and 45 minutes. We have lots to do here. All right, so yesterday I didn't get to read you the full story that I'm going to punish you with now. First you had to sit and listen to how Roman calendars work, and they didn't even work, and that's why there's no Roman Empire today. Discuss. This story that I was in the middle of, or the very beginning of bringing to you from The Messenger, is the story behind Trump's gag order. Remember, lots happening in court these days. A gag order that involved a man under criminal investigation for stalking. This was the exclusive reporting available to The Messenger thanks to Adam Klasfeld. And it's a convoluted story, but it helps explain why it's been difficult to enforce a gag order as written, as conceived by the judges in any of the cases. Then there are several cases that have gag orders, and why it will be difficult to prevent the kind of speech the gag order wanted to. It's not so much a difficult to understand or weedy area of constitutional law. It's the actual physical mechanics of who's doing the speaking and why. And on top of it all, one, the usual protagonist in this story, Donald Trump, is a crazy a-hole wannabe dictator fascist. And the complicating factor is that sometimes the speech is being initiated by a wackadoodle stalker creepo, and a different one entirely from Donald Trump. Although, again, the common thread here, weird hair and a disgusting face. So what's the story? A Wisconsin man behind the digital campaign that prompted Donald Trump's gag order received 3 50-year restraining orders and 2 criminal convictions, resulting in jail time for harassing women. That's just the kind of guy he is. How do they get connected? What's happening here? The saga of former President Donald Trump's first gag order began with a social media post by an account called judicial protest. That's the place to start on this thread. And the tweet was, or whatever it was, why is Judge Engeron's principal law clerk, Allison R. Greenfield, palling around with Chuck Schumer? Judicial protest wrote on September 27th, 2023, showing the clerk and the Senate Majority Leader posing for a picture, right? Totally routine picture, just the sort of thing that celebrities and or politicians take with people all the time. If you get your picture taken with a famous actor or actress, or is there a non-gendered word for person involved in a thespian? I don't know. I guess maybe. Is that non-gendered? Ask the Romans if they have time. See if you can get it on their calendar. How will they know? Anyway, if you have a picture with a thespian celebrity, you wish people would start running around saying, yeah, that's his boyfriend, girlfriend, non-gendered, sex partner, what have you. But that's not the way it works. But, of course, Donald Trump doesn't really care how things work. He just wants to accuse people of things. But this guy is just saying they're palling around. And again, if you have a picture with a celebrity, the celebrity will probably deny it. And if you're smart, you should deny it too. You're not palling around. I met this person. I saw him at the Bagel Cafe, and he allowed me to take a picture of him. It was very nice. He signed an autograph. Whatever. That's all this guy has. But he tweets it around and says, why are they palling around? Trying to imply that there was some untoward relationship between political operatives and the judge's clerk, or that the judge's clerk was a political operative. And therefore, the trial can't be fair, and they're out to get him, and it's not real justice, etc. That was the idea. They were planting the seeds for that. So the Post tagged the former president's sons, Eric Trump and Donald Trump Jr., who also are co-defendants in the case, along with social media influencers on the political right. That's how they wanted to put this thing into circulation. On October 3rd, remember this first starts on September 27th. On October 3rd, don't even ask the Romans what day it is. This would be the second day of his civil fraud trial. The Romans would understand that. Trump attached a screenshot of that post to his own social media website, Truth Social, with a message falsely labeling Greenfield the girlfriend of Schumer. That's where it comes from. He just says it. Well, you see, he's male and she's female, and so there you go. It's got to be a sexual relationship because whenever I go to a department store, I just rape any females I see, and that's a normal course of events for me, and I don't understand why you're getting upset about it. But he just attached that label, and that was it. That's the substance of his accusation. Manhattan Supreme Court Justice Arthur Engeron then ordered Trump to delete the untrue and disparaging post, leading to an unprecedented gag order against a former U.S. president, because he's an unprecedented a-hole. It remains unclear how Trump learned about Judicial Protest's social media account or why he decided to share it with an audience of millions. As of Wednesday, I guess this is a recent article, so the other day? I don't know. Is this, this is written on the 14th. That's yesterday. So yeah, as of Wednesday of this week, where were we with this? The Judicial Protest account was followed by Trump's campaign spokesman, Jason Miller, who attended the former president's civil fraud trial. So I guess they were saying it's unknown exactly how Judicial Protest's stupid post came to Trump's attention such that he could see it and decide, let's pretend that that's his girlfriend and make people angry. But remember, the guy tagged Eric, tagged Donald Jr., either one of them could have forwarded it. Hey, Dad, look at this. Jason Miller followed Judicial Protest, so he may have seen it and he may have showed it to Trump. We don't know exactly, but that's part of the problem. Now, an investigation by The Messenger has found that 40-year-old Wisconsin resident Brock Fredin, and I'm not sure how he pronounces his last name. It's Fredin. Fredin, not sure. But we'll probably go with Fredin in this. Though that's the man behind the Judicial Protest account on Twitter. Brock Fredin, and he has a prolific history of civil and criminal litigation over his harassment of women that echoes his attacks on Greenfield. Fredin has been hit with 50-year restraining orders, barring him from contacting 3 women. And he has been criminally convicted multiple times for violating 2 of those orders. So 3 times he's been barred from having any contact with women, and he's already been convicted of violating those orders twice. He is currently under criminal investigation for more suspected restraining order violations and possible stalking, which, if you have 2 convictions for restraining order violations and more under investigation, you're pretty much a stalker at this point. A month and a half later, Trump's sharing of judicial protests post snowballed into more than a month of litigation, fines of $15,000 for violating those rulings, and an ongoing appellate battle to determine the fault lines of what the former president can say about the judge's staff. This is kind of an amazing downhill effect of one greasy weirdo's lunatic post, don't you think? And also this guy's post, the other greasy weirdo. Those orders remain under appeal. We're still litigating this in what Trump's lawyers describe as a First Amendment battle about the GOP frontrunner's ability to criticize the judge's principal law clerk. So far, a New York appellate court has rejected those arguments, reinstating the gag orders, which narrowly protect the judge's staff. Trump remains free to criticize the judge and New York Attorney General Letitia James, who brought the case that could shut down his New York business empire. Trump's attorneys have cited the judicial protest account in appellate court records without providing any information about the account's owner. So this is why this story is so important. This is actually not only is sort of the provenance of this idea that there's something wrong with the relationship between the judge and the clerk, and then B, that there's this imaginary relationship between the clerk and Chuck Schumer that Trump is propagating. But what's weird is, so now the lawyers are citing their source, as they would have to do if they're making a legal argument. Where did this thing come from? Who's, you're going to gag Trump. But all I did was retweet what that guy said. Well, who's that guy? Well, they say it's a judicial protest. It's an account on Twitter, but they don't tell you who it is. And I'm not certain how they would know offhand if he's just a rando. And he is, apparently. It looks like he's just a rando. But it's the sort of thing that you would think the court would say. If you're citing this as a source or an authority, you're going to have to find out more about who is this person. Why? Well, as it turns out, that's kind of an interesting thing. It's not entirely clear that it needs to be on the record legally, but it does help us fill out the picture of just what's going on here and just how crazy it is that we're expending high-level judicial resources on settling the question of, can a wackadoodle ex-president just say whatever he wants, and is it even him saying it if all he's doing is finding equally wackadoodle, rando, crazy people on the internet and just retweeting it? And how dangerous is it that a president of the United States, former president, would-be president again, is just literally making public statements based on what some random wacko is saying for unknown reasons? So let's find out. Who's this random wacko? This investigation here at the Messenger found that Trump's attorney or surrogates repeatedly cited or boosted Friedland's online content. Happens all the time. But the Messenger found nothing to suggest that there's any connection between Fredin and Trump or his team. It's just sort of purely out there in the ether. They keep seeing this guy's stuff. He keeps directing it toward them, and they keep seeing it and keep saying, yes, we want to be part of amplifying this wackadoodle stalker idiot from nowhere. Neither Trump's campaign nor Fredin responded to requests for comment for this article. You should know that. So here's the unsettling backstory of the judicial protest account. Now, remember that he's got restraining orders against him taken out by 3 different women who say that they have all been harassed online by this guy. Since all three women who have come forward against Fredin are court-adjudicated victims of harassment, the Messenger, the paper here, is not publishing their names. Their attorney declined to comment for this article. Two of the women met Fredin on dating websites in 2014 and 2015, and then called things off after receiving messages described by one Minnesota court as unsettling, to say the least, I guess. The third woman has been an assistant city attorney for Minneapolis when she operated a Twitter account on women's issues and gender violence, something she was professionally interested in, right? On January 24th, 2017, this account posted Fredin's photographs, asking followers to boost his image to, quote, keep women safe. That's pretty aggressive, and it made him mad. So what did he do about it? Well, why don't we tell you? Roughly a month later, on February 22nd, 2017, the same Twitter account reported that another woman had stepped forward to accuse Fredin of rape. Yikes. Fredin has never been charged with that crime. It's important to point that out. And he unsuccessfully sued the operator of the Twitter account, the third woman he was ended up bothering, and unsuccessfully sued her for repeating the alleged survivor's accusation. A federal judge threw out the defamation lawsuit, noting that the fact that Fredin was never prosecuted does not necessarily render the allegation false. Okay, so that's the setup. When we come back, more about the deeply weird background and connection, if there even is one, between this guy and Weirdo Trump. Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time, just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's continue with the reading of this story. The story is actually titled "The Story Behind Trump's Gag Order Involves a Man Under Criminal Investigation for Stalking." I think they may have changed that at some point, and I must be reading the URL rather than the actual title, but it's something damn close to that. Okay, so again, the guy we're talking about is Brock Fredin, just a dude from Minnesota. That's it. But who has been in trouble for stalking and harassing two women or more from dating websites back in 2014 and 15, then landed himself in trouble with a third woman who was working as a prosecutor locally, who said, "This guy's a menace. Here's his photo. Watch out. He's a weirdo and a stalker. Women of Minneapolis should be aware of that if you meet him on a dating website." As a matter of fact, another woman, I think a fourth woman, not one of the first two, has told me, the operator of this website and district attorney type person, that she was raped by this guy. You gotta watch out. So interesting reaction from the guy. This guy, not hiding in the shadows, says, I'm going to sue the woman running this Twitter account that's identified me and says that I was allegedly the perpetrator of this alleged rape here. I'm going to sue her. He comes out from the shadows and does this, loses the suit, but of course, essentially gets the bug. Now he's also going to harass this woman prosecutor as well, add her to the list. So, Minnesota court records show that juries convicted Fredin for violating restraining orders at least twice, leading him to spend roughly 8 months in jail from October 2018 to June 2019. Fredin's separate stalking conviction was overturned on appeal following a change in Minnesota law. You might want to look into that change. But this is the guy who's essentially advising Trump on the conduct of his trial in the court of public opinion that has landed him with a gag order and is now consuming judicial resources up and down the federal court system, trying to figure out what are the limits of the First Amendment for a former president who's running for re-election. And now you'll first see in this article the first photograph of Brock Fredin. And man, you don't want to see this guy anywhere. He is, I'm characterizing it perhaps unfairly. You know, there's some people who are probably big Brock Fredin fans, and I don't know whether they're good people or not, but greasy weirdo lunatic. Sorry, that's just that's the way you come off in photos, Brock. I'm not saying you couldn't get rid of that with a good makeover or something like that. Anyway, so there you have it. Fredin's not out of legal hot water yet, and neither is Trump. Next section, the judicial protest account on Twitter. The judicial protest user touts Trump's endorsement. And here's where you start to get the sense of how unbalanced Brock Fredin is if the stalking and alleged rapes and online harassment haven't sold you on it. On October 13th, 2023, a little more than a week after Trump's gag order, right? Local police in Hudson, Wisconsin arrested Fredin on suspicion of 130 counts of violating a restraining order and stalking, according to his arrest record. So now he's been convicted of 2 violations of restraining orders. He's now arrested on suspicion of 130 counts of violating restraining orders and stalking, which I think would naturally follow from 130 counts of violating a restraining order. Fredin spent less than a day in St. Croix County Jail, and there's still an active criminal investigation into the allegations, police confirmed to the Messenger. But I guess they had to arrest him, process him, release him to go violate more restraining orders. Fredin seems to feel aggrieved by the justice system, given the names of his YouTube accounts, which include Judicial Protest, just like on Twitter, but there are other similarly named YouTube pages like Judicial Grift, Judicial Tyranny, and Judicial Dissent. And they all share videos attacking people connected to Fredin's cases, including attorneys, judges, and law enforcement. But the owner of the account cannot be confirmed. It seems to me, I don't know, I guess can't be confirmed by the Messenger and their investigative reporters, perhaps. But don't you think that, like, law enforcement could identify this and nail it down? I mean, if you can't, how the hell are we ever going to get to the, bottom of this and actually get a gag order in place that's going to make any sense? Even if you settle the First Amendment issues, you're never going to be able to tamp down on this stuff. And given the way Trump operates in court, right, even if they nail this thing down and they nail this guy dead to rights, somebody else will do it, and then Trump will say it's not. Courts don't adjudicate general principles like this. If they say that what Fredin did is illegal, that doesn't mean it's illegal for somebody else to do it. They have to specifically say it's illegal for each person to do it. which has some grounding in truth. The kernel of truth there being, well, everybody who you want to stop from doing these things is going to have to be identified, charged, convicted, and then sentenced such that they are legally bound to stop. And then, of course, if they don't listen to you, the whole process starts all over again. So, back to the story here. In 2020, Fredin's penchant for filing at least a dozen retaliatory lawsuits in state and federal jurisdictions in Wisconsin and Minnesota led then U.S. District Judge Susan Richard Nelson to declare him a, quote, malicious and vexatious litigant. I don't know if that's a specific term of art, but that's what she decided to call him in whatever proceedings landed on her desk. That is a designation that requires him to seek court approval before suing in her district. In other words, this person is a constant problem. They file bogus lawsuits that are personal grievances that have no way of being adjudicated in court, or sometimes are just made up. And listen, if you're going to come and waste this court's time, you now need permission to file. I need to review your case to make sure, if you have a legitimate case, we'll let you go forward with it. But if it's another one of these stupid made up things, we're just going to stop it, nip it in the bud. No more time wasted on your garbage. So, what's happening? Fredin also unsuccessfully sued the now defunct Twin Cities-based news outlet City Pages for reporting on his harassment in a profile titled Accused Stalker Brock Fredin, that's him, is writing a horror story and he's the main character. Oh my goodness. And a horror story obviously gets horror dramatic music behind it. But you can see, they don't go into great detail. I'd love to read that story if we can find it online, but it's pretty clear that, he's essentially, being pretty clearly identified as a personal nightmare for everybody who comes across him. And then if you say, I really don't want to have anything to do with you anymore, you're a personal nightmare for me, he then doubles down and harasses you day and night online. And you'll see some of his methodology later in the story. And then he, on top of which, he goes to court and sues you before you can even get to court and sue him and ask for a restraining order, so that when you show up and say, I've had enough of this guy, and you try to get a restraining order, they say, funny thing about that, he's asking for a restraining order against you. And now it's a he said, she said story, as opposed to, no, this guy is a serial creep. We need to do something about him. Now, Fredin seems to feel validated by Trump's attention these, later days, currently, now that he's being retweeted by him all the time. But it's more than just, hey, Trump, who's a famous guy, retweeted me. That's thrill enough for addicted Twitter users. But he's a former president. That's a different thing. Plus, of course, it's making news headlines, and judicial proceedings are happening all over the country with constitutional issues tied up in it. And this greasy weirdo loser feels like a real person now. Fredin seems to feel validated by Trump's attention. On October 31st, Halloween, 2023, Fredin told an appellate court, why is he even speaking to appellate courts? But he told an appellate court that Trump's post, retweeting his post, amounted to an endorsement of his view that two of his victims should be prosecuted and jailed. So what? Wait a minute. Hold on a second. You tweeted a picture of the judge's clerk in New York and said, why? And she was a photo of her posing with Chuck Schumer and said, why are they palling around? Why is the clerk palling around with Chuck Schumer? You tagged Trump's kids on it. Somebody shows it to Trump. Trump puts it on Truth Social and says, look at this. This is a picture of the judge's clerk who's Chuck Schumer's girlfriend. And Brock Fredin, back in, I don't know whether he's in Wisconsin or Minnesota or both or neither, he sees this retweeting and says, what that is right there, that's not just Trump saying, yeah, he agrees with me that there's something wrong with the relationship between this judge, his clerk, and his clerk's possible relationship, which doesn't exist, with Chuck Schumer because they once took a picture together. That's not what he's endorsing that for sure, but he's also endorsing me personally in my feud against two women who won 50-year restraining orders against me. This is, by retweeting that, President Trump is saying, I'm right, they're wrong, there shouldn't be restraining orders against me, and because there are, that's an abuse of the judicial system, and the two women who took out restraining orders against me should be prosecuted and thrown in jail. Lock them up. Lock her up. Lock her up. Lock her up. And Trump, honestly, for all we know, that may be exactly what's going on in Trump's head. I heard this guy is down on his luck. I'm going to pardon him when I'm president, and I'm going to arrest those women who won't talk to him and go out with him on the internet. We don't know that that's not what he's got planned. But weirder still, Trump probably has no idea who this guy is. He's just taking his Twitter feed and retweeting it all the time. But that's it. So now, how did this even happen? Why is Fredin talking to an appellate court? I guess we better read some more. Petitioner wanted to emphasize that these sentiments have already received endorsement from President Trump. Which sentiments? That the two women who want restraining orders continued against Brock William are wrong and should go to prison. Well, I guess he enforced his lawyer to include this in the brief. Petitioner, Fredin, wants to emphasize that these sentiments, that these two women should go to jail, have received endorsements from President Trump, who expressed support for them on October 3rd, 2023. Fredin wrote in his brief, I guess he's writing his own brief, so he didn't have to convince his lawyer to do it, because really, honestly, the lawyer should have resigned if that's what they're asking for. So he's writing his own briefings. Fredin wrote in his brief, which asked the Minnesota Supreme Court, to reverse his convictions. That's where we're at. He's been convicted of violating the 50-year restraining orders against him. I'm appealing that. I want that reversed. Why? On what grounds? On the grounds that President Trump says those women should be in jail. What makes you say that President Trump says those women should be in jail? He retweeted me once. Oh, I see. So you're a crazy idiot as well as a greasy stalker. Wonderful. Fantastic. But it's going to take us a million years to do anything about you and put you away in jail where you belong. The brief included a screenshot of Trump's Truth Social post boosting him. A decision on that high court appeal remains pending. I mean, it's stupid and it should take 5 seconds. The Supreme Court should say, this doesn't even belong here. Why are we even considering this guy's appeal? His claim is that we should let him go for the stalking charges because President Trump retweeted him. That's not a thing. Get out of here. But here's the Minnesota Supreme Court wasting its time, twiddling its thumbs, going through the process to make sure that it's properly adjudicated so that we don't just throw guys in jail, because we don't do that in this country unless President Trump orders it, I guess, which he will later. But this is what we have to do with this guy in the meantime. So, next section here. Echoes of the attacks on the judge's clerk. For the three women who won harassment restraining orders, Fredin's attacks on them appear to mirror his actions toward Greenfield, the clerk assisting the judge in Trump's case. He has attacked the targeted women in their professional circles, created harassing websites about them, and filed formal complaints against them, according to court filings. And remember, in two of these cases, they're just women who met him on a dating site and then said, I don't want to go out with you. They were right about that, but that's the basis. That's their great crime against Brock William, for which he undertakes all the rest of this activity. The third woman was the local prosecutor woman who called him out on this and said, this guy is a dangerous weirdo stalker. Oh yeah? I'll show you. I'm also going to harass you in the same way. P.S. I know President Trump and he's going to put you in jail. That's literally who we're dealing with here. Now, in one case, Fredin tagged a woman's law school in a social media post describing her as a, quote, likely criminal, and registered a website in her name, a court found. Now, I'm not clear on whether, when they say registered a website in her name, whether that means I'll make up an old-timey name for her. BettyJones.com, or BettyJonesIsALikelyCriminal.com, or something like that, or whether he registered a website called the Daily Harasser and said that the owner of it was Betty Jones. But I think it's the first. And I think that becomes clear a little bit later in the article. So, in addition, Fredin sent numerous emails or other electronic communications to persons associated with the woman's online activities or employment, each time sharing identifying information about her, her employer, and her anonymous Twitter account, accusing her of criminal conduct and soliciting others to make complaints about her. Nelson wrote in a ruling some 3 years ago, Nelson being the local federal judge there in Minnesota, right? The one who called him a weirdo, vexatious litigant, and you now need permission to file any more lawsuits in my district. So that's interesting. So this is what she does, and I guess, or what he does. And it seems like they're describing the local prosecutor woman here. I don't know whether the other two women that he tried to date online are also lawyers, but I would say maybe could be the case, but it seems unlikely. So he's here targeting the woman who called him out as a sex pest and creep and possible rapist. And he's suing her, but he's also harassing her and emailing her law school, her employer, accusing her of criminal conduct and trying to get other people to do the same online. Fredin filed a bar complaint against one woman. Again, doesn't say the same woman, so I'm starting to wonder whether he's trying to date women attorneys here and landing himself in trouble over that. Anyway, Fredin filed a bar complaint against one woman to Minnesota's Office of Lawyers' Professional Responsibility, which found it did not warrant any investigation, which, good outcome. But again, this disrupts your life personally and professionally based on nothing. Just a guy found the phone number of the office and said, I'm filing a complaint. And now people have to waste judicial or quasi-judicial time and energy doing this, and people have to spend time and money and energy defending themselves against made-up charges. All right. So, another woman alleged in court documents that Fredin filed a baseless Title IX complaint to Penn State University, her then graduate school. So basically, he finds you on a dating website, asks you if you want to go out. If you say no, he finds out everything he can about your personal life and then calls your employer and files a complaint, calls your school and files a complaint, calls the Board of Professional Responsibility covering your profession and files a complaint. This pattern continues with Trump's trial. Fredin filed a bar complaint against Greenfield. That's the judge's clerk in question here. He's in Minnesota or Wisconsin or both. She's in New York. He's calling and filing a bar complaint with the state bar in New York. Based on what? Who knows? Do you know this person? Have you ever had contact with Greenfield? No. Saw her on the internet. And guess what? So he files the complaint, and they're like, I guess I'll write this down and put it in the system so that we can adjudicate it and dismiss it later on. But, there's not going to be any publicity for this thing, right? Well, wrong. Guess what? Fredin's, I guess, smarter than that. He calls Breitbart. He takes the story to Breitbart. Did you know that there was an ethics complaint against this clerk? Of course, Trump is right. There is something wrong with her. There's an ethics complaint against her. I filed it. I filed it based on nothing. But the story, as far as you're concerned, here at Breitbart, is there's an ethics complaint. Go with it. And they did. Now, remember, of course, that Breitbart is not only a garbage can, open sewer, but was co-founded by Trump's ex-strategist, Steve Bannon, who may or may not still be his strategist, as it turns out. The complaint was dated October 3rd, 2023, the same day that Trump was first gagged. How do you like that? In the complaint filed under his name, Fredin identified himself as the owner of the Judicial Protest account. So at least we now know that he admits to owning that. Fredin emailed the letter to Enguerrand's chambers, copying the missive to 4 state agencies and disciplinary committees: the Attorney Grievance Committee, the Commission on Judicial Conduct, the Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government, and the New York Office of Court Administration. So he's making trouble on multiple fronts based on nothing because he wants to, because he's a Trump fan and he likes to harass women online, especially professional women. Some 3 years before targeting Greenfield, Fredin openly threatened other courtroom clerks whose judges ruled in favor of one of his victims. Remember, he's stalking and harassing a woman. She sues or initiates court proceedings and presses criminal charges. He loses his case and then immediately launches a campaign against the judges and the clerks, in particular, of the judges who convicted him. He does this all the time, and now he's doing it with Trump, and everybody's like, Trump is alleging this thing. We got to look into it. Maybe there's some sort of bias. No, it's a creepy weirdo who does this for a hobby. Remember, it says, this is a quote here, remember, each clerk is going to get reported to the Professional Responsibility Board. This is his quote. And websites are going up, exposing you for your failure to protect, Fredin wrote in an appellate brief from September 2020. I mean, he's not only is he making trouble in the trial courts, but he's making trouble on appeal like Trump, just appealing things that people have to deal with this wacko and say, no, you have no case, get out of here. But in the meantime, he gets to file things that, they make trouble, they cost money, and they give people psychic problems. They give you agita forever while you deal with scraping off this weirdo, and he never lets go. That's his MO. And then he puts up all these websites too. If they can't throw him out of court fast enough, and then he just goes on the internet. And then, of course, if you Google these people, the first things that hit are a weirdo, greasy loser's accusations and fantasies about them. Now, how grounded in reality is he? Not at all. In a 30-page appellate brief, it's amazing you can put one together. But can anybody do it? Because look at how do you fill 30 pages if you don't know what you're talking about? Well, like this. In a 30-page appellate brief, Fredin told court staff, well, I'll tell you what, you will suffer a, quote, billy goat curse, or, quote, curse of the Bambino, which, if I'm not mistaken, is just the weirdo legendary excuse for the Red Sox never winning the World Series for 100 years or whatever because they traded away Babe Ruth way back when and something. That's not like I'm going to hit you with the curse of the Bambino. Well, it's sort of exclusive to the Bambino. Sorry. And the Red Sox, I guess. It's non-transferable. You can't put the curse of the Bambino on me. But what the hell? In other words, he likes the word curse. And we're going to do a billy goat curse, whatever the hell that might be. Look it up on Wikipedia. There's probably something. And the curse of the Bambino are going to be on you for the next 300 parentheses, 300 in numerals. Like, this is an official legal document. Don't you have to do that according to law? You say 300 and then you put the number in parentheses so that nothing could be misunderstood about these curses, which don't exist. But they're going to fall on you for the next 300 years for your handling of the case. In other words, well, where's my little, there we go. Pretty much, he's a wackadoodle cuckoo idiot, and he's driving public comment by Trump on First Amendment cases bearing on the rights of not just any individual, but a former president who's now claims to be running for re-election to the presidency. And courts are having to spend actual time on it. Like, serious high-ranking courts have to sort this stuff out. Wow. So what about that MO? Dozens of vicious and inflammatory websites is the next section. All 3 women protected by the restraining orders accused Fredin in court documents of building websites to humiliate them. Court records show that Fredin built websites in the name of 2 of the women. That, I think, clarifies the question from before. When you say registered a website in the name of this woman, yeah, it's probably the first option, that Betty Jones is a, cuckoobird.com or whatever it is. I'm sure he's naming it something considerably less funny and friendly sounding. So all three women say that he built websites humiliating them. Court records show that Fredin built websites in the name of two of the women, and that the third said Fredin authored and posted a website about the law firm representing her, which linked to her graduate school profile. In an order, a federal judge found Fredin created dozens of inflammatory, baseless, demeaning, and disturbing websites and videos. The order forced Fredin to take down 25 of the vicious websites and videos identified by name and any others he created targeting the women, their attorneys, or the court. So he's done this before, and now they're still wringing their hands over whether or not they should do this to Trump. In the middle of Trump's civil fraud case, Fredin's bar complaint against the judge's clerk was disseminated on a website also built in her name. So he put what's her name? I can't remember her first name, but Greenfield is a badclerk.com or whatever he might have named it. Domain registration records show a URL in the name of Engoron's clerk was created on October 4th, 2023, the day after Trump's gag order was imposed. The website refers to the clerk as a, quote, Democratic operative and hack, and splashes her photographs throughout the page, inviting visitors to call disciplinary authorities, asking for her to be, quote, disbarred. I don't know why, in quotes, I mean, I think she's an attorney, right? She could be disbarred, but it makes it sound like that's not a penalty that's available for some reason. Anyway, a similar website in the judge's name was registered that same day. Fredin has shared the domains from both websites on social media, and both contain the complaint that he filed against Greenfield, but registration records disguise the identities of both websites' owners. So they can't say at this point, or at least the investigative reporter can't say definitively that he's the one doing this, but there are some pretty strong indicators that it is him, because on the day those things went up for the first time ever, both of them, well, first of all, they follow his usual pattern, and both of them contained copies of his complaint against Greenfield, which really wouldn't have been in anybody else's hands at that point. So it's pretty obvious it's him. But they can't prove it because something and the records disguise the name of the owner, which, when are they going to get rid of that? The total number of websites created by Fredin against his perceived antagonists remains unknown. And that's not the bottom of the barrel with this guy. There's more after this. Here we go. Okay, come on, mute button. Let's get your stuff together. Okay, well, we should have kept it muted because there's lots of fun and interesting distractions in the background. Hi, welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning website. We have, this is my new one, and I'm creating Attacking Myself. I'm going to adopt this guy's tactics. It's real interesting. Okay, so anyway, this is a guy clearly with too much time on his hands. And so is this guy here in Minnesota and Wisconsin. And we were just detailing that this is clearly a hobby of his, and he's just transferred it to Trump. Instead of doing this on his own behalf, he's now doing this on Trump's behalf, and showing it off to Trump via Eric and Don Jr. And somebody is passing it to Donald Trump, and he's gleefully retweeting it. But now you can start to see the difficulty that's going to arise. Not only the stupid claims that, he's got a First Amendment right to say these things, but that even if you slap a gag order on Trump, there are freelance weirdos out there who will just say the things that Trump is barred from saying, and Trump is very interested in finding out, if I retweet that guy, have I violated the gag order? Now the answer is yes, you have, and that's not going to help you. But then of course you appeal that and claim anything, because yesterday we were detailing how this guy is about to go into the Supreme Court of the United States and say that the invented doctrine of absolute and total immunity before, during, and after my presidency comes from the Constitution itself and the Take Care Clause, and I have a 12th Amendment responsibility to disrupt this proceeding, even though there's no role for me in this proceeding when it goes normally. He's about to say this to the Supreme Court and claim that this is that this is the case. And to say also that his weird backwards reading of the impeachment clauses that says if I'm not convicted in the Senate in an impeachment proceeding, then you're not allowed to prosecute me legally afterwards because I read this thing upside down and backwards. I mean, they should be laughing at him. But in the meantime, he's letting this weirdo do his PR for his civil case in New York, not to mention probably, I wonder, is he saying anything about Judge Chutkin or not? I guess not, because I'm not certain he's caught on to, for some reason he doesn't care about that one, or he doesn't have any beef with that clerk, maybe. Not yet. Anyway, this is his MO. This is what he does. Next section here, Trump barred from using employees or agents to evade the gag order, right? You see where the problem now arises? He's just going to say, this guy's not my employee or agent. He's a rando. I just love letting randos drive my agenda for me because I'm a dangerous person. And I don't want to, this person is willing to say the things that are on my mind. Great. Fantastic. I'll just retweet them. Will I pay them? Will I acknowledge them? No, they're not. I don't ask them to do this. I just have millions of fans who want to do this. And the court doesn't know what to do with that. Justice Engoron made clear that Trump and his attorneys cannot evade his gag orders. Yes, they can. Through employees or agents. The judge also emphasized that the penalties for any violations by Trump or his attorneys could be severe, including heavy fines and possible imprisonment. Trump's spokesman did not respond to questions about whether the former president's campaign or officials have communicated with Fredin, who did not respond to requests for comment. Why not just deny it outright? Well, I could, but what if I don't deny it, and then you all have to wonder, am I hiding something, and you have to investigate that too? And as it turns out, no, we actually haven't had any contact. Why deny it? Because then you would be able to drop your investigation into whether or not I'm lying. And I'd rather you spend time trying to investigate whether or not I'm lying so that there's less time for you to expose exactly what's going on here. Fredin's public statements show that he believes that Trump endorsed his sentiments. And that's another complication, right? Trump is like, I got nothing to do with this guy. This guy is saying, I got everything to do with Trump. Trump loves me. Trump endorses me. I am a friend of Donald Trump's. We have a relationship. And Trump would be right, probably, in saying, no, we don't, unless there's something we don't know about. But it doesn't need to exist in order for Trump to be getting something out of the relationship. That is, all the stuff that he's supposedly not allowed to say, but he can actually propagate on social media anyway without having to, and then would be able to claim, I didn't say it, he said it. I'm just telling people that he said that. Well, you're not allowed to do that either. Oh, I didn't know. Well, I told you you're not allowed to use any employees or agents. He's not an employee or agent. He's just a rando. Well, he's consistently used by you to express these sentiments. That makes him let's call him an unpaid agent. All right. But I'm going to appeal that decision, and we're going to be talking about it for months. I know. You really we need something in here where we just open a trap door underneath you when you're in the courtroom and you fall into a pit of alligators and we're done with you. But that's not due process. So, Fredin's public statements show that he believes that Trump endorsed his sentiments. Trump's attorneys and surrogates have never commented on Fredin's credibility, and there is no evidence any of the former president's representatives looked into his background. Probably not. Although, who knows? If they did, they might like him even more. That's entirely possible. On November 3rd of this year, Trump's lead attorney, Christopher Kise, cited a story on Breitbart reporting that Fredin filed a bar complaint against Greenfield. That was part of the plan, right? So, and this is what he does. So Chris Kise, the one who's supposed to be like the serious lawyer, shows up in court and says, so as I understand it this morning, there's a new story out about particular political partisan contributions that have been made by certain members of your staff, Judge. That there was a complaint made, Kise told the judge last month, later specifying that it was the just published Breitbart story. So, again, interesting ploy. I don't know anything about these things. I just look, I'm just a regular citizen reading the news, and it says in the news today that your clerk has been making frequent and suspect partisan political campaign contributions to Democrats, and that's probably why she is so anti-Trump, and she's passing notes to you to make you anti-Trump. That's the allegation here. I read it in the news. Well, keeping in mind that, one, it was printed in Breitbart, which isn't news. Two, Breitbart has a very narrow segment of the population reading it. And three, I don't think Chris Kise, as conservative and weird as he may be, spends his mornings reading Breitbart normally, except in connection to this case. So he probably got a tip. There's a news story about this that you can use in your case, to use it against the judge's clerk. And it just so happens that it's on my website. You should read it. And our source is a weirdo who will just do anything and say anything to attack women. And he's also a Trump fan. So he, for whatever reason, decided to spend his time attacking this woman on Trump's behalf. And then he told us, and we printed it, and now you should take it and use it in court. I mean, it's very, Newt Gingrich used to do this all the time. He used to say, when he wanted to focus attention on something, he would call up some podunk newspaper, usually local to the problem or maybe local to him, and say, nobody's covering this, but this is a really big scoop. I'm a very powerful guy. Obviously, you should talk to me. You should print this story. And if they got bamboozled into covering it as a story, he would then take that clip and he'd go to a larger, more influential paper and say, these guys have scooped you on this. Here's a news story that says this is a big deal. Now, I'm the only congressman out here talking about this thing, but it is a big deal. They're right. You should print it. Oh, yeah, look at that. And then they'll print it. Now he has two clips, and he goes to a bigger newspaper and say, there's two newspapers that are scooping you on this. Why aren't you in on this action? This guy is just bootstrapping his own weirdo hobby and stalking into a presidential indictment and First Amendment case. And then, of course, loving being in the limelight and then misinterpreting it as when Donald Trump is president, he's going to throw the people who keep suing me for stalking in jail. Yeah. Okay. Well, now the supposed serious attorney for Donald Trump is engaging in the same bootstrapping, picking up where he left off. Now, later that day, after Kise comes in and says, I just happened to read in the newspaper that there's a story that says your clerk is somehow corrupt. Later that day, Engoron expanded the gag order to include Trump's lawyers. That's what he thought about Kise's presentation to him. But Trump's lawyers navigated around the order by receiving permission to attack the clerk again in a motion for a mistrial. That's an interesting workaround, right? All right, that's it. Kise, you're not allowed to talk about me I guess you can talk about me, the judge, but you can't, no more talking about my staff or my clerk. Well, that's not right. That's not going to work either, Judge, because we're about to file a motion for a mistrial based on your clerk's corruption. We have to be able to allege what the grounds of our mistrial are. You got me again, Kise. Okay, fine. Adopting the same argument as the Breitbart article, which cited Fredin as its primary source, so the bootstrapping is out in the open here, Trump's attorneys claimed that Greenfield made excessive campaign donations in violation of state ethics rules. This argument failed. Engoron rejected the motion, cited the applicable rules, and found that the clerk's donations were lawful. The Trump family's attorney, Clifford Robert, decide on a first name, pal. Clifford Robert also cited the judicial protest account in describing the history of the gag order fight. The same page routinely posts videos and photographs of, and other media about, the principal law clerk, Robert wrote in an appellate brief on November 15th of this year, referring to Fredin's account. These posts have garnered millions of views. Of the 9 posts from Fredin's judicial protest account attacking Greenfield, 3 indicate they reached more than 1 million impressions. A verified user, that's in quotes the blue check, on Twitter, a verified user who paid his $8, Fredin routinely tries to amplify their reach by tagging members of Trump's family, his attorneys, and conservative political and media personalities, including the former president's advisor, Jason Miller, himself a bit of a rapist as it happens. Almost immediately after the gag order was temporarily paused on November 16th, Jason Miller takes advantage of the pause and shares a link on his Twitter account to the website disseminating Fredin's complaint against Greenfield. A search shows that Miller's account never criticized Greenfield by name before or after the pause of the gag order. So Miller is attempting to, I should say, display that he's abiding by the gag order. It was during the pause that he actually names Greenfield or retweets something that names Greenfield. It's not my fault. I didn't break any rules. There was a pause going on, which, by the way, should tell every appellate court. This is what happens when you give a temporary pause to a gag order. They immediately go out and violate it and then say, you can't get us for this because there's a pause in it. So you should be aware of that by now. You should have guessed that ahead of time, really. Trump's legal team declined to comment, and Miller referred questions to a spokesperson for the campaign, who did not respond. Fredin did not answer multiple phone calls to the phone number that he listed in court records, and he did not respond to email inquiries by the time of publication. New York's Office of Court Administration, the chief administrative body for the state's judiciary, also did not respond when asked if they were aware of Fredin's criminal history or whether he is on the radar of local authorities. Court officials say Trump's attacks on the clerk are putting her in danger. In sworn documents, the New York court security officers said that Engeron and Greenfield received hundreds of harassing phone calls and messages, many with anti-Semitic undertones. The court's security division observed spikes in credible threats after Trump's attacks on the clerk, which ebbed during the periods when the gag order was in effect and not violated. So direct correlation, of course, between the imposition of the gag order and the number of threats. So it's wise to keep the gag orders in place. It is unwise to pause them pending appeal, and it's only going to result in more threats and more problems. But that's actually it. That's the end of the article. It's just an interesting background and troubling, to say the least. You know, it's par for the course, I guess. But once again, we find out that total wackadoodle randos are driving what's supposed to be a presidential campaign and presidential First Amendment issues. And what could be more, addictive to a personality like that than having them, giving them the opportunity to say that they've been validated by the President of the United States, who they believe is probably still the President of the United States. And, and for this guy to, I'm sure he'll be an enthusiastic Trump supporter on the basis of what he thinks is an implied promise from Trump to jail his enemies. And why wouldn't he believe that? Trump is running around saying, I'm going to jail my enemies. Why wouldn't I jail the enemies of my friends, even if I don't really know who they are? And then, of course, when the time comes, given the chance, will he even remember? Does he have any idea who this guy is? I don't know. Doesn't matter. This guy thinks so he's going to keep up his work. And in the meantime, Trump's lawyers are going to say, if certain people connected to Trump want to retweet this random guy, that doesn't violate the gag order. It's not Trump doing it. And then every time they pause it, of course, Trump will then be the one who does it. And then, of course, there's the question of, can they even fine him into not, agreeing not to do this stuff? But I guess for the most part, he's been compliant. But it's easy to be compliant when 10 million other people will just do your dirty work for you. And the courts are just totally unprepared for dealing with that. Anyway, I just wanted to sort of show how deep and weedy that story gets. It's kind of amazing. Good Friday material, I guess. And, I don't know. Just wanted to share that with you. All right. There's other things that I need to share with you. And there's another one that looks to be a long-ish read, but seems to be the story of the day. And we want to keep current about these things. CNN's story being widely circulated this morning. And in fact, seems to have been widely circulated inside the newsroom because there are byline names here. 5 people? Jeremy Herb, Katie Bo Lillis, Natasha Bertrand, we hear her name a lot, Evan Perez, and Zachary Cohen. 5 people on the byline from today's story. You've probably already guessed which one it is, but in case you haven't read it, you're on the West Coast or something, you're just waking up. The mystery of the missing binder. All right, is that bad? How a collection of raw Russian intelligence disappeared under Trump. Well, lots of things probably disappear under Trump. Toilet seats, for one thing. But this binder is another binder full of classified documents that would be very sensitive to national security that just disappeared from the White House one day, that day being January 20th, 2021. And I don't know, has it ever been seen again? A binder containing highly classified information related to, of all things, Russian election interference went missing at the end of Donald Trump's presidency, raising alarms among intelligence officials that some of the most closely guarded national security secrets from the U.S. and its allies could be exposed to, I don't know, Putin, let's say. Sources familiar with the matter told CNN. Its disappearance, which has not been previously reported, believe it or not, was so concerning that intelligence officials briefed Senate Intelligence Committee leaders last year about the missing materials and the government's efforts to retrieve them, the sources said. In the 2+ years since Trump left office, the missing intelligence does not appear to have been found. Weird that they can't keep track of things like that. The binder contained raw intelligence that the U.S. and its NATO allies collected on Russians and Russian agents, which, somebody might want to buy. You never know. Including sources and methods that informed the U.S. government's assessment that Russian President Vladimir Putin sought to help Trump win the 2016 election, sources tell CNN. So if, for instance, the Russians might be interested in finding out who tipped off the American intelligence community that we were doing this, give me that guy's name. Donald Trump is in possession, probably, of that name and could provide it to them. Or at least the binder that they gave him that had all that information in it, why they gave it to him, because he was the president of the United States. Yeah, but this is, about his own criminal activity. Well, is it? We don't really know. Anyway, here's all the evidence, sir. And then it was gone, and now no one knows where it is. But given the fact that some of the other stuff that was gone that nobody knew where it was, it turned out to be in Trump's office in Perva-Lago, there's real reason to believe he has this too. So, this intelligence was so sensitive that lawmakers and congressional aides with top secret security clearances were able to review the material only at CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, where their work scrutinizing it was itself kept in a locked safe. That's pretty secret, in other words. The binder was last seen at the White House during Trump's final days in office. We've lost this binder. Where did you last see it? In Trump's hands. Well, we you can't say for sure what happened to it. But okay, the former president had ordered it brought there. This is great, right? Why does he have this? This is nuts. Why did you provide it to him? Well, I order you. I'm president of the United States. Give me all of the evidence against me. I order it. And they did it. Now, that's not to say there aren't copies of it elsewhere, but they gave it to him. But isn't that a bad idea? Should you not give a potential criminal defendant all the evidence you have against him before you bring charges? After you bring charges, there's a certain amount of disclosure that has to happen. We understand that as part of due process. What about prior to charging him? No. Well, what about if I'm the president? Oh, crap. You got me there. I have to give it to you. Why did he ask for it? Well, he asked for it, allegedly, so that he could declassify it and hand it out to everybody. That's what he says. Of course, wink, wink. It's also, I'll declassify it. That doesn't mean I'm going to hand it out to everybody. It's declassified. Can I see it? No. Why not? It's not classified. Because I'm not showing you. Why am I not showing you? Because this is valuable stuff. And I mean, for instance, let's say, to sell it to Vladimir Putin. So it needs to remain secret. But I'm declassifying it so that if I'm ever arrested for selling it to Putin, I can say, it's not even classified. What are you talking about? I didn't break any laws. Wow, is that going to work? Let's see. So there we have it. Binder last seen in the White House during Trump's final days of office. Why was it there? He ordered it to be brought to him. Why did he order it to be brought to him? So he could declassify it. Wow. The former president had ordered it brought there so he could declassify a host of documents related to the FBI's Russia investigation under the care of then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, who is back in court again today, I think. The binder was scoured by, or maybe yesterday. The binder was scoured by Republican aides working to redact the most sensitive information so that it could be declassified and released publicly. The Russian intelligence was just a small part of the collection of documents in the binder, described as being 10 inches thick and containing reams of information about the FBI's Crossfire Hurricane investigation into the 2016 Trump campaign and Russia. But the raw intelligence on Russia was among its most sensitive classified materials, and top Trump administration officials repeatedly tried to block the former president from releasing the documents. This is what happens when you let a lunatic have the imprimatur of the highest office in the land. He'll do crazy ass things with it. And you feel like you have to let him do it, as opposed to pushing him off a cliff, let's say. The day before leaving office, Trump issued an order declassifying most of the binder's contents, setting off a flurry of activity in the final 48 hours of his presidency. Multiple copies of the redacted binder were created inside the White House. Great. With plans to distribute them across Washington to Republicans in Congress and right-wing journalists. But instead, copies initially sent out were frantically retrieved at the direction of White House lawyers demanding additional redactions. Just minutes before Joe Biden was inaugurated, Meadows rushed to the Justice Department to hand-deliver a redacted copy for a last review. Years later, the Justice Department has yet to release all of the documents, despite Trump's declassification order. Oh my God, the deep state is standing in the way. Additional copies with varying levels of redactions ended up at the National Archives, but an unredacted version of the binder containing the classified raw intelligence went missing amid the chaotic final hours of the Trump White House. Golly gee, we just can't seem to get our hands around this guy. It's crazy. The circumstances surrounding its disappearance remain shrouded in mystery. Guess what? Want to cut through the shroud of mystery? Donald Trump has possession of this stuff. You should arrest him for espionage. And then you should execute him after due adjudication of that espionage. That's where treason leads. Sorry. I don't know what to tell you. We all thought you were going to live out your days golfing in New Jersey and Florida, but instead you've been electrocuted. These things happen. Well, apparently they don't, So, Anyway, shrouded in mystery. Gee whiz. Just like this whole thing about the Engeron's clerk remains shrouded in mystery. We don't know who owns these websites. It's crazy. Golly, you can't figure it out. U.S. officials repeatedly declined to discuss any government efforts to locate the binder or confirm that any intelligence was missing. Well, I guess that's problematic. You got to have them say it's missing, at least for us to make a big deal out of it. But they can't because it's so super secret. Ay. The binder was not among the classified items found in last year's search of Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort, according to a U.S. official familiar with the matter, who said the FBI was not looking specifically for intelligence related to Russia when it obtained a search warrant for the former president's residence last year. I don't know whether they didn't think he was that audacious to take that. They just didn't know he had taken it, or maybe they did know, and maybe this is just one of those non-Goldilocks documents that they were talking about, where they're like, we think he's got really sensitive intelligence, but we have to find stuff that's classified that it would be illegal for him to have taken with him and kept, but which wouldn't be dangerous to reveal the contents of to a jury in order to be able to convict the guy. We got to show the physical evidence, but if showing the physical evidence itself risks national security, are we going to want to do that? You got to find the right kinds of documents. Luckily, he took so many, that it might not be impossible to find such a thing. So I don't know. It may be just this is among the kinds of material that's so sensitive that they just don't want to acknowledge that they do know where it is. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe it's so sensitive that they don't want to acknowledge or that it's missing, but they just don't want to say so. So they, issue a non-denial denial about it. Ugh, it's crazy. The twists and turns of this story. All right. We'll get to the rest of it after this next break. Just a little bit though, before our music comes on. There is also no reference to the binder or the missing Russian intelligence in the June indictment of Trump over the mishandling of classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. One theory has emerged about the binder's whereabouts. I guess besides my theory, which is that Donald Trump has it. Here's the theory. Cassidy Hutchinson, one of Meadows' top aides, testified to Congress and wrote in her memoir that she believes Meadows took home an unredacted version of the binder. She said it had been kept in Meadows' safe and that she saw him leave with it from the White House. That's a good theory. I am almost positive it went home with Mr. Meadows. Now, where it went after that, we don't know. This is what Hutchinson told the January 6th committee in a closed-door testimony session, according to transcripts released last year. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Net Roots Radio. One last segment. Let's just give you as much of the rest of the CNN article as possible. This is going to be a nightmare for summarizing for Scott. The more articles we have, the easier it is to fill out a narrative couple of paragraphs. Focusing, as we often do on Fridays, on like one or two things very intensely makes it difficult to fill out the narrative. But I mean, the narrative is what it is. We talked about these two things. It's not your fault, Scott. It's mine, right? You're just faithfully reporting what we did. Okay. So now that we're faithfully reporting what I did, let's report what Mark Meadows did. According to Cassidy Hutchinson, she's pretty sure that at least one of those binders, unredacted binders, full of raw Russian intelligence, went home with Mark Meadows. Does that mean another one did or didn't go home or to Florida with the resident of Mar-a-Lago? No, may also have happened, but at least one binder spotted, like being carried out of the White House by Mark Meadows. That seems like a problem. Anyway, a lawyer for Meadows strenuously denies that Meadows mishandled any classified information at the White House. He took it somewhere else. I mishandled it in Starbucks and my trailer in the mountains. Saying any suggestion that Meadows was responsible for classified information going missing was flat wrong. Which, of course, I mean, it's interesting. Is that a lawyer dodge? Like, you spot the problem there? No. Any suggestion that Meadows, that my client was responsible for classified information going missing was flat wrong. Now, are you saying that because it's your contention, or at least your client's contention, that the material that went missing is not classified? Is that what you're saying? Or what? No comment. No follow-up either, I guess. Mr. Meadows was keenly aware of and adhered to requirements for the proper handling of classified material. Any such material that he handled or was in his possession has been treated accordingly, and any suggestion that he is responsible for any missing binder or other classified information is flat wrong. That's Meadows' attorney, George Terwilliger. Haven't we heard his name before? In a statement to CNN. Is it just in his connection with Meadows, representing Meadows? I feel like we've heard that name a couple of times. But anyway, anyone in any entity suggesting that he is responsible for anything missing does not have facts and should exercise great care before making false allegations. Well, what if they make true allegations? Is that okay? Anyway, Still a bit of a non-denial denial. Well, the idea that he took classified information. Well, I know you claim it's declassified. You might be wrong about that, in which case your whole thing falls apart, but that would be the least of your concerns if your whole thing falls apart. But it's an interesting trick, right? I didn't take any classified information. I took declassified information. It wasn't really declassified. No comment. Thank you very much. This press conference is over. Anyway, in the years since Trump left office, his allies have pursued the redacted binder so that they can release it publicly, suing the Justice Department and the National Archives earlier this year, and Trump's lawyers are now seeking access to the classified intelligence, still classified, I guess, from the 2016 election assessment as they prepare for his defense against charges stemming from the efforts to overturn the 2020 election. This account of the certified binder's journey to the White House, how its trail went cold once Trump left office, mystery, and the lingering questions it raises is based on interviews with more than a dozen sources familiar with the matter, all of whom requested anonymity to discuss the sensitive issue. The CIA, the FBI, the National Archives, and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence declined to comment for this story. Wink. A spokeswoman for the Senate Intelligence Committee declined to comment, but a dozen people who know all these stories commented anonymously, you should know. A lawyer for Hutchinson also declined comment. A spokesperson or spokesman for Trump did not respond to a request for comment. That could happen any day. So, what happens here? Next section is titled, A Safe Within a Safe at the CIA. Did you know that there were safes inside safes there? I guess you had to figure that was the case. The missing binder is at the heart of one of the most contentious fights waged behind the scenes by then President Trump. Despite fierce opposition from his own national security officials, Trump spent years trying to declassify material that he said would prove his claims the FBI's Russia probe into his campaign was a hoax. The binder chart origins trace back to 2018, when Republicans on the House Intelligence Committee, led by Chairman Devin Nunes, compiled a classified report alleging the Obama administration skewed intelligence in its assessment that Putin had worked to help Trump in the 2016 election. You know, all the evidence besides Trump going in television and saying, Russia, if you're listening, and we want a meeting with your sons in Trump Tower. If it's what we think it is, I love it. Okay, all of that is just out the window. We deny it all. It's a big hoax. The binder's origins trace all the way back to 2018, right? When Devin Nunes and the House Intelligence guys put together, alleged that Obama administration had skewed intelligence to create this accusation. The GOP report, which criticized the intelligence community's tradecraft, scrutinized the highly classified intelligence from 2016 that informed the assessment that Putin and Russia sought to assist Trump's campaign. House Republicans cut a deal with the CIA in which the committee brought in a safe for its documents that was then placed inside a CIA vault, a setup that prompted some officials to characterize it as a turducken or a safe within a safe. Do I understand this correctly? The House Republicans cut a deal with the CIA. The committee brought in a safe of its own for its documents that they were compiling as part of their report. And so the committee work product was kept in a safe that was inside a safe at the CIA. Weird. Republican and Democratic sources disagreed on the substance of the report. GOP sources, familiar with its details, said the report argued the intelligence community assessment was skewed by senior Obama administration officials to exclude intelligence, suggesting that Russia actually wanted Hillary Clinton to win in 2016. While overemphasizing the significance of intelligence indicating that Russia preferred Trump. So once again, in other words, I guess this time working from behind the eight ball, it's still the Republican default that every one of their accusations is in fact a confession. You've been caught basically accepting help from Russia. Oh, we were hoping to keep that hidden. So what the thing we're going to do is, no. The Russians were really trying to help Hillary Clinton. I accuse Hillary Clinton of having been helped by Russia. There's the accusation that's a confession. It's just that instead of blurting it out ahead of time, you were caught first. and then you tried to obfuscate the situation by claiming the opposite of what happened. There, late in arriving is the accusation that's actually a confession. Democratic sources, however, say the Republican allegations were overblown. One source and the intelligence referenced in the report actually proved the opposite of what Republicans were claiming, saying it showed that Russia was meddling in U.S. elections and seeking to personally manipulate Trump and help him win. The Democratic view was corroborated in 2020 by the Republican-led Senate Intelligence Committee, which concluded that the 2016 assessment was a sound intelligence product and that analysts were under no political pressure to reach specific conclusions, undercutting Nunes's allegations. Nunes, who left Congress to become CEO of Trump's media company, which sucks, provided a statement in response to questions mocking CNN for focusing on secret Trump binders, except that apparently they're real and Trump has them. National security leaders resist is the next section. Nunes's 2018 report became one of many documents connected to the Russia investigation that Trump and his allies wanted to make public. But Trump's national security leaders, particularly CIA Director Gina Haspel, vehemently resisted public release of the report and other Russia documents, fearing the exposure of sources and methods. That's what they do. The disagreement followed Haspel throughout her tenure in the Trump administration. Trump privately made clear that he wanted to get his hands on the GOP report. During one exchange in October of 2020, Trump suggested, when he should have been paying attention to the coronavirus pandemic, instead suggested that he should personally visit CIA headquarters and demand access to it, according to a source familiar with the conversation. But of course, that meant not going to the golf course or the steakhouse or, basically spending time doing stuff that I really don't want to, but I should just think about that. I'm going to go to the CIA and demand it. And I mean, it was a good thought. Like, what are the CIA going to do? They're not going to give it to the president? They shouldn't. He's a danger, but he's also the president. Golly gee, what can we do? Our hands are tied. But yet he didn't bother to do that. That's amazing. Anyway, let's see. In the lead up to the 2020 election, two Trump intelligence leaders, acting director of national intelligence, Richard Grenell, that's right, I forgot the acting, there we go, and his successor, John Ratcliffe, declassified some documents and intelligence related to Russia and the FBI, but the House GOP report remained classified. Trump considered firing Haspel after the election as he pushed to release more information about the Russia investigation. At least one Trump advisor floated replacing Haspel with Kash Patel, who's still a pain in everybody's ass. He was, of course, at the time an aide to Nunes in 2018, or not at the time, but had previously been an aide to Nunes when the GOP report was drafted. So that was thought would be more amenable to handing it over to Trump. He would bring it to him. Don't make Trump come and get it. In 2019, Patel went to work for Trump on the National Security Council before becoming chief of staff to the acting defense secretary in Trump's final months. In December of 2020, then Attorney General William Barr worked with Ratcliffe to dissuade Trump from declassifying at least a subset of the intelligence related to Russia, arguing that it would damage national security, sources familiar with the matter said. Other current and former officials say Barr and aides in his office also pushed the FBI and the intelligence agencies to satisfy Trump's demands and make public more of the information, pressure that continued after Barr left office. At one point after the election, Haspel, FBI Director Christopher Wray, and NSA Director General Paul Nakasone trekked to Capitol Hill on short notice to speak to congressional intelligence leaders about their deep concerns of Trump possibly releasing the material, sources said. Next section, secrets arrive at the White House. On December 19th, 4 days after Barr announced his resignation, Nunes met with Meadows at the White House to discuss how to declassify documents related to the FBI's investigation into the Trump campaign and Russia. Hutchinson testified to Congress. I got to say, this is an awful lot of meetings about, we want to do this, how to do it, and then nobody can figure out how to do it. That's amazing. Or indicative of just how dangerous the stuff was. Maybe both. 11 days later, sources say that a copy of the GOP report was brought to the White House as one part of the massive binder of documents on Russia and the FBI investigation. Okay, so part of that 10-inch thick binder is the GOP report, it is alleged. Hutchinson told the January 6th committee she signed for the documents when they arrived at the White House. Yikes. Over the next few days, Meadows discussed the documents with then White House counsel Patsy Maloney and also met with Republican staffers from the House Intelligence Committee to review them, according to Hutchinson. In his book about his time as Trump's chief of staff, Meadows wrote that Trump demanded the documents be brought to the White House. I personally went through every page, that's bad, to make sure that the president's declassification would not inadvertently disclose sources and methods, he wrote. Was he, qualified to do so? I don't know. Anyway, probably allowed to do so, but was he qualified? Along with the GOP report scrutinizing the intelligence on Russia, the binder's contents included the FBI's problematic foreign intelligence surveillance warrants on a Trump campaign advisor from 2017. You remember that one. Interview notes with Christopher Steele, author of the infamous dossier on Trump and Russia, and FBI reports from a confidential human source related to the Russia investigation. Oh, there's one more. And internal FBI and DOJ text messages and emails, among other documents. The version of the binder Hutchinson signed for was kept in Meadows' office safe, she testified, except when it was being worked on by congressional staffers. Why are they even there? No one knows. He wanted to keep that one on, he said, how did she put this? He wanted to keep that one close hold. Not close held, not closely held, but, or as a close hold, but he wanted to keep that one close hold. He didn't want that one to be widely known about, Hutchinson told the January 6th committee. I just know Mr. Meadows, period. I just know Mr. Meadows. He wouldn't have had that one copied unless he did it on his own. But I don't think he knows how to use a copy machine. That's pretty amazing. In her book, Hutchinson recalled a moment when Meadows asked her to retrieve the binder and complained when she told him it was in the safe. Okay. I told you not to let it out of your sight. It should have been in your desk drawer, Meadows told her. Wait a minute. What kind of an order is that? It's so sensitive. We need to keep it safe. That's why I put it in the safe. What are you, crazy? You should keep it in your desk drawer. That's not really all that safe, though. Okay. My desk drawer, Mark, is not where classified documents belong. It's in the safe. You have nothing to worry about, Hutchinson writes that she responded. Once the committee aides completed their proposed redactions, additional copies were made at the White House so the binder could be declassified and released. And you'll never guess what comes next. A section entitled, A Botched Rollout. Botched? I can't believe it. Meanwhile, at the FBI, top officials scrambled to protect the most sensitive details and limit the damage of what they felt were insufficient redactions. Any further declassification would reveal sensitive intelligence collection techniques, damage foreign partner relations, jeopardize United States intelligence community equities, potentially violate court orders limiting the dissemination of FISA information, and endanger confidential human sources, a top FBI official wrote to White House officials, according to a source who read portions of the letter to CNN. I'm sure the pushback would be, not just from Republicans, but from some Democrats and journalists and other liberal sources who say, well, the FBI always tends to overclassify these things. They always tend to hide things that don't really need to be hidden under the guise of protecting national security. So, but, par for the course. They're doing it again. Now, on January 19th, 2021, so post-January 6th riot and just prior to Biden's inauguration, Trump issued a declassification order for a, quote, binder of materials related to the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Crossfire Hurricane investigation. That would seem to be this binder, you would think, right? But we don't know. Just a binder. There's no number on it or anything. The White House had planned to distribute the declassified documents around Washington, including to right-wing journalists and Trump ally John Solomon. Oh boy. So you know it's bad stuff. But Trump's order did not lead to its release because he was so super competent, I guess. And earlier this year, Solomon sued the Justice Department and the National Archives for access to the documents. His court filings provide colorful details of the last-minute scramble. Solomon claims that on the night of January 19th, when nothing should be happening, Meadows invited him to the White House to review several hundred pages of the declassified binder. One of Solomon's staffers was even allowed to leave the White House with the declassified records in a paper bag, because that's super up and up. Mr. Solomon's staff began setting up a scanning operation for the complete set of documents to be released the next morning, Solomon's attorneys wrote in a court filing last month. But as they set up the equipment, they received a call from the White House asking that the documents, still under embargo, be returned because the White House wished to make some additional redactions to unclassified information under the Privacy Act. Hutchinson writes in her book that Cipollone told her after 10:30 p.m. on January 19th to have Meadows retrieve the binders that had been given to Solomon and a right-wing columnist. The Crossfire Hurricane binders are a complete disaster. They're still full of classified information, Hutchinson writes that Cipollone told her. Those binders need to come back to the White House, like now. 10:30 at night. The documents were returned the next morning, January 20th, after they were picked up by a Secret Service agent in a Whole Foods grocery bag, according to Hutchinson, because why have a locked briefcase for anything? So how quickly can we get this to DOJ is the next section. On the morning of January 20th, the final day of the Trump presidency, and only half a day at that, so it has to happen before noon, Meadows rushed to the Justice Department to turn over a copy of the binder Trump ordered declassified for a final review. They got now an hour left. Hutchins told the committee that sometime between 11 a.m. and 11:30 that morning, Meadows emerged from the White House in a hurry, of course, to deliver a copy of the binder to the Justice Department. Hutchinson recalled Meadows asking his security detail, how quickly can we get this to the DOJ? It doesn't really matter because the DOJ is not going to have time to review anything. Not in 20 minutes? What? Meadows also delivered a memo instructing the Justice Department to conduct its own privacy review of the bulk of the documents Trump had declassified before they were released. I am returning the bulk, anyway, of the binder of declassified documents, to the Department of Justice, including all that appeared to have a potential to raise privacy concerns, with the instruction that the department must expeditiously conduct a Privacy Act review under the standards that the Department of Justice would normally apply, redact material appropriately, and release the remaining material with redactions applied, Meadows wrote in the memo. This is essentially like the Midnight Judges situation from Marbury versus Madison. There's literally half an hour left in the presidency. There's no way you're going to even get these. You might not even get these materials during the Trump presidency. But if you do, he's issuing orders that in a few minutes, Donald Trump will no longer be president. But you should execute his orders anyway because I've written them down for you ahead of time. I don't know if that's going to work. But that's what Solomon's case is about. I'm suing to get those things because a president said that I should be entitled to them. Not the president, because the guy who's the president now says, no, you're not. But it doesn't matter because a prior president wrote it down. Yeah, well, so what? He's not the president anymore. Sorry. You waited too long. That's actually your guy's fault. Solomon's lawyers contend in a legal filing that Meadows promised Mr. Solomon that he would receive the revised binder. However, this never occurred because the guy who promised him has no power anymore. As for the unredacted version of the binder, Hutchinson writes in her book that she saw Meadows get into his limo the night of January 19th with the original Crossfire Hurricane binder tucked under his arm, the one that's supposed to be in a safe. What the hell is Mark doing with the unredacted Crossfire Hurricane binder? Hutchinson recalled asking herself as Meadows drove away. He's criming. That's what. When she looked in Meadows' safe for the last time before she left the White House, Hutchinson said it was gone. Well, we know where it was. Hutchinson took it. You just said you saw him do that. I don't think that would have been something that he would have destroyed, Hutchinson told the January 6th committee. It was not returned anywhere, and it never left our office to go internally anywhere. It stayed in our safe, the office safe, most of the time. Terwilliger, an attorney for Meadows, disputes Hutchinson's account, saying Meadows did not mishandle any classified documents at the White House. That's interesting. Again, I think they're declassified. Well, they're not. Well, I didn't handle them at the White House. I took them out of there in a shopping bag. So, or under my arm. Anyway, in this thing. The hunt continues, comes up next. Even after Trump left office, the hunt for the binder continued on multiple fronts. Well, of course it should. It's missing classified material. Roughly a year after Trump left office, Senate Intelligence Committee leaders were briefed by intelligence officials about the disappearance of the raw Russian intelligence contained in the unredacted version of the binder and the government's efforts to retrieve it, sources told CNN. And so they're just as incapable of retrieving the thing as Trump was of declassifying and releasing the thing. At the same time, Trump's allies sought to regain access to the declassified version of the binder that Meadows had taken to the Justice Department. In June of 2022, Trump named Solomon and Patel as his representatives to the National Archives. Remember that? They were then authorized to view, well, supposedly, that's supposed to mean that they're authorized to view the former president's records. Solomon's lawsuit included email correspondence showing how Solomon and Patel tried to get access to the binder as soon as they were named as Trump's representatives. That's an interesting thing, right? Who do you want to take care of your National Archives stuff? Normally you would probably say, I don't know, the former White House counsel, my current counsel as a former president. I have an office and everything. How about one of those guys? But instead, Kash Patel, who, he was hoping to install him as CIA director, but didn't manage to get that done. And a journalist who I promised this material to, but I just couldn't get it to them. Well, I can end around that. I'll name him my custodian. P.S. He's also going to publish everything. Is that okay? No, it's really not. Well, okay. Let's see what else happens. There is a binder of documents from the Russia investigation that the president declassified with an order in his last few days in office. It's about 10 inches thick, Solomon wrote in a June 2022 message to Gary Stern, the Archives General Counsel. We'd like to make a set of copies, digital or paper format. It's okay either way, of every document that was declassified by his order and included in the binder. Well, I don't know. I don't think so. In February and March, the FBI released, under the Freedom of Information Act, several hundred pages of heavily redacted internal records from its Russia investigation, following lawsuits from conservative groups seeking documents from the probe. The Justice Department said in a June filing seeking to dismiss Solomon's lawsuit that the FBI's document release had fulfilled Meadows' request for a Privacy Act review, noting that it had resulted in the posting of most of the binder on the FBI's FOIA website. Solomon responded, claiming the documents that the FBI released were only a small part of the binder's contents, with substantial additional redactions. Last July, Meadows said in an interview with Solomon that he turned over the documents to the Justice Department out of an abundance of caution. Oh, I see, of course. Well, we gave them those classified documents. I want to stress they were declassified documents. To do, like his lawyer instructed him to say, to do a final redaction for some of that personal information with the instruction that they were to go ahead and disseminate those, Meadows said. We expected fully that they would do that at the most a few days, but here we are a few years later. Well, none of that time that you had turned this over to the Justice Department was Donald Trump the president, except for the first 20 minutes of it. And then if the order is countermanded by the next president, I don't know that there's much you can do. But once again, playing in the legal gray zones and hoping that somebody somewhere will do something stupid and they'll get all the information out there. And I don't even know if they really want that, or that they'd rather just tease the public with it and sell it to Putin along the way. Anyway, amazing development, but also par for the course. I don't know what to tell you. Trump just continues to ignore everything, and all the interesting legal parsing from Meadows and his attorney. I didn't mishandle classified information. Did you mishandle declassified information? Can one really mishandle declassified information? Well, you can if you only think it's declassified, but it really isn't. Oh, yeah, I guess that would be something of a problem. Okay, well, it's time for us to turn things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and get the hell out of here for the weekend. There will, of course, be a Monday reckoning with all of this stuff. Greg Dworkin will have a chance to bring some more of these stories to your attention and give more links to Scott to work with next week. But in the meantime, how about a little preview of what's up with the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, for instance, here's a story. Remember Trump's constant propaganda about the economy? Well, if you don't, you'll be reminded of it, and you'll figure out exactly what that means now that Biden is actually fulfilling all of the promises that Trump said he was going to deliver. What about the rest of the show? Well, the Idaho Transportation Department is up to something. They completed construction on the state's first wildlife overpass this fall. Those are nice things to have. I've seen them in New Jersey, as a matter of fact. And the animals are already finding their way over the highway, so they actually work. That's good news. Liberals seek the ouster of a Trump lawyer. What Trump lawyer? What did he do? I'll tell you after this.
From netrootsradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Well, that Trump lawyer who they want kicked out, well, he's the guy who advised fake electors from a Wisconsin judicial ethics panel. Or rather, he advised them and they want him ejected from that ethics panel. What's he doing there in the first place? I don't know. And then 2 months after the massive foreign cyber attack, Kansas courts' computer systems are starting to come back online. Congratulations, Kansas. See you next week, everybody.